and welcome to Daily Spark TV. I am Dr. Angela Tester. My guest today is Valerie Katz, and we are talking about the balanced life of a woman. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about Valerie. She was born in Los Angeles, California. She has a 12th grade education, a mother of 4, a grandmother of 6. Her firstborn son, unfortunately, passed away from brain cancer at the age of 35. She has lived in the same home and worked at the same job for 34 years. Did I mention she was a single mother for 30 of those years? But she also has a new title to add to her list, and that is author. She has written The News from Arkansas, A Sense of Humor Required. So today, the balanced life of a woman, I think she can share some nuggets of wisdom. Thank you so much, Valerie, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I am excited to talk to you about the many hats that we as women wear. So sometimes we are wife, sometimes mother, sometimes grandmother. Considering you have been or are all three, which is the easiest, or are they kind of the same but different?
Well, I think that since I was a single mother for all those years, at first being a wife didn't suit me. I got married, had children, and divorced when I was young, and then just continued to do the mother thing on my own, which was rewarding, very rewarding. I have the best children in the world. I really do. They're just fabulous people. And I've gone into a lot of things in my life kind of backwards. When I was a child and there would be a baby in the room, my grandmother would say, "Oh, give the baby to Valerie, let her hold it." And I'd think, I don't want to hold that baby. But I would take it and I'd smile. And so I was absolutely never going to become a mother. I told my children that over dinner at Thanksgiving one time. We were going around saying what we were thankful for. I was telling him I was glad that God knew better than me about whether or not I should be a mother, because I didn't know what I would do without them. But being a mother has just been wonderful, and I had the best mother in the whole world, and the only one that argues with me about that is my son Donald, who says that I am.
I love that. I love that. Now, being a mother can be easy, but at the same time, it can be difficult and even quite challenging at times. What are some things that you think a mother at the various stages of her life can do to help stay balanced?
Well, I think since my children are so wonderful and agreeable, I have been able to find time for just me. I need me time.
Yeah.
I drove a school bus for a while, and I would drive way out, and I'd have a half hour coming back, and that half hour was my decompressing time, so that when I got home, I was ready to deal with the what's for dinner, and that type of thing.
So just learning to have those moments, and even maybe those bigger chunks of time as well, just to decompress and to make sure that you're ready to deal with the next phase of what the day is going to bring to you.
Yes.
I like that. I like that. Now, I remember the conversations of my grandmother and her friends, and giving those little nuggets of wisdom. Would you say that if you are trying to be a traditional wife, and what I mean by that is that we're doing gender-specific roles. Nowadays, it's more modern and it's different. But if you're the person who is responsible for making sure that there's dinner, or you're making sure that the children are ready for when Papa comes home, let's say, do you think that it's important as a mom to plan your day so that you're able to not only do those things that are expected of you, those duties that are expected of you, but also to still keep that sense of balance and have some me time in there?
Yes, I am a very organized person. Before I go to bed, everything that I need to take out of the door with me in the morning is right by the door. And I trained my kids the same way. All of your school stuff is there by the door. Is everything there? I don't want to have anybody saying, oh no, I forgot that. Just everything is right there. And for a while I delivered mail. And so I had to be at work at 6:30 in the morning. And I had this basket and I loaded their clothes up in it. And then when I'd get up 5 or something, I would roll them up and balance them like cordwood in the back of my car and take them to the babysitter. But everything was there, and I could just drop them and that off and still be at work at 6:30 in the morning. But I tend to like to have things organized and know when things are going to happen and like that. I can be spur of the moment too, but I'm pretty organized.
Right. Now, for the mother who says, well, you know, I've tried to plan my day, but it's just not working, and I still feel as though there's some moments in my life. How can, especially with our new moms, right? They're not used to baby, they're not used to juggling all of these hats. How can they still feel as though they're themselves and not just mom and not just a wife, but that they have that time and create that boundary for themselves?
That was very hard for me. I wasn't good at that. I don't know if that's why my marriage failed or what, but I had a very hard time balancing all of that. And I guess I didn't do it very well, but my children turned out okay. But that was very hard for me to balance that and to know that I was still me.
Absolutely. And it is so important to be able to hold on to that.
Yes.
And especially that's one of the complaints of a new mom is that, oh my goodness, I'm no longer me.
Yeah.
Now I'm mom or honey or, I'm wife and mother. But what about a little bit of me?
Yeah.
But it is time for us to go to break. But don't worry, we are definitely going to continue this conversation of balancing all of the hats that we as women wear. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. I'm Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Valerie Katz, and we are talking about the balanced life of a woman. We do so much in our lives, but we also need to make sure that we have a balanced life. A little bit of me time, a little bit of us time, a little bit of we time, if you will, to make sure that all relationships in our lives are taken care of and nurtured and loved. Well, one of the roles that we play many times in our lives, be it that we've gotten married, we're in our 20s and our 30s and our 40s, or perhaps it's your first time in your 50. What do you think are some things that we need to learn how to do or make sure that we do if we want to be a good wife? Now, I understand good wife means different things to different people, but do you think that there are some things that across the board we need to do?
I think that the things that I did wrong early in my life and in my marriages was I forgot who I was. I wanted to be who they thought I should be. And that just doesn't work. I know I was talking to a psychologist and I said, I don't know if I can keep this face on any longer. And he said, well, Valerie, this shouldn't be a face. You should let him know who you are. How can you love each other if you don't know who each other is?
Yeah.
And I finally got that right when I was 67 and met David, who was the love of my life. And one of his friends says, the reason that you get along with him so well is you don't let him push you around. If you don't like it, you just say no. and he appreciates and respects that, and that's why you two get along so well. If I had known that 100 years ago, things might have been different, but I'm not complaining. I've had a good life.
But just being able to, having the freedom to be exactly who you are, whatever that is, but the freedom of being who you are and learning each other. I think that's a nugget in itself. Make sure that we learn who the other person is, not accept them for the projection of who we think that they are, but actually who they are. good, bad, and indifferent. I like that. I like that, definitely. Now, if there is, I'm going to kind of flip the question just a little bit. Having a son myself, if there's one thing that you wish for or you hope for your son, a quality in his wife, a characteristic in his wife, what would you hope that your son would choose to help him have a really great marriage?
Someone that loves and understands him, and somebody who's not jealous of anything in the relationship, because that is very undermining, and somebody with a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Having that good sense of humor definitely helps, because we do need to be able to laugh
We do.
at ourselves. We need to be able to joke and laugh with our spouse, and there not be that tension
Yeah.
after. So that's true. That's true.
One
We
of the
definitely
things
need
that you mentioned earlier was that I had lost a son when he was
Yes.
in his 30s, and people would come up to me then and say, how can you go on after losing your child? And I just tell them, he lived 7 years longer than they told him he could. He fought for every day. He lived like he was going to live forever. And do you think that he's looking down on me saying, oh, Mom, you should just quit now?
Right.
I know where he's in a happy place, and
Absolutely.
I'll see him again someday.
And that has a way of reassuring us, and it kind of helps propel us through the day, because you know that it really is going to be okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for reminding someone who needed to hear that in that moment. That's one thing that I love about Daily Spark TV and about what I'm able to do, is that we're able to encourage people. And I know people say that all the time, let's encourage, inspire, and empower, right? It's like, yeah. But the truth is that you never know who's going to empower that person, who's going to encourage or inspire them. Someone right now needed to hear that. And that's an awesome moment. Thank you so much for reminding us of that. Now, one of the things that that we have to, be it that we are, our wife hat is on or our mom hat is on, or how, tilted to the side it is at any given moment, is that we need to make sure that there's a sense of balance between our husbands and our children. How do we teach our kids that they too need to understand that there's a boundary there, that there's mommy daddy time, and then there's family time, and then there's time for each parent to be with the children as well? How do we teach that to them?
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't have to really
Do all the juggling?
do all the juggling, because the person I was juggling with was out of the question fairly recently. But my children knew who was in charge. I used to have a sign on the refrigerator. The golden rule in this house is the guy with the gold makes the rules, and that's me. But they knew that when I said, this is how it's going to be, that was how it was going to be. I learned that from my mother. She always said, the best thing to do when you're with your children is to be firm but fair. And so if I told my kids, if you do that, this is going to happen. If they did that, that happened. And there was just no way around it. My youngest son pushed that to the absolute limit every day. But he knew eventually I was going to get him. But I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Absolutely. And I like that bit of advice, that you need to be firm but fair, because sometimes we can be a little bit too easy or unfair, or a little bit overly judgmental and kind of snap to a rush decision on things. So I think that was a great bit of advice there. I really appreciate that.
Another thing that my mother taught me was, once it's over, it's over. And you don't keep saying, well, the last time you did this. There was never any of that. So if my kids got in trouble, they got in trouble. They took their licks, and we went on, and I never mentioned it again. We do now, because when we get around the table then we talk about the stories. My grandkids will say, Grandma, tell that story about Dad, you know?
Yeah. And isn't that so funny? Because usually, as the child, you don't get to hear the stories about your parents. So it is hilarious when you found out, oh gosh, Dad used to do that. My mom was like that. And it just ends up being so funny. And you realize that, hey, my parents were once like real people, you know? And it just, in my mind, it helps kind of bond you together. So instead of being afraid to share those oops moments that we all have had, instead, if we share those oops moments, that it makes us a little bit more relatable. I love it. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break, but when we get back, we will continue to talk about all these hats that we women wear. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, I'm Valerie Katz. At age 67, I moved from Los Angeles to a rural village in northwest Arkansas called Bella Vista. That was a big move for me. I'm a California girl. My children and my grandchildren were unofficially forbidden to move more than an hour and a half from me. But one day, my husband was watching TV, and Eric Estrada came on TV. Yes, Eric Estrada, the actor, and said, come to Bella Vista, free weekend, enjoy yourself. He wanted to move away from California for reasons of retiring, but I wasn't going. But I thought this will be fun. So we went, and I fell in love with the place. I just absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful. The people were so nice. So I said, I think we should move here. And he was quite amazed at that and said, okay, shall I call a real estate agent? And he did, and we went to California to tell my family we were moving. They are amazed and astonished to this day that their mother actually moved that far from home. But I loved it there. And when we moved there, the people were so warm and welcoming. All the people in the cul-de-sac came and introduced themselves and brought cake and cookies. And it was just wonderful. And then after a year, I lost my husband. And my sister and I took to the road in a 35-foot motorhome, and we had great adventures. And during all this time, I sent the news of all that was different in Arkansas to my friends and family, called The News from Arkansas. And they kept saying, you know, this stuff is hilarious, Valerie. You should make it into a book. And so I did. The News from Arkansas, Sense of Humor Required by Valerie Katz. You can get it on Amazon. Come travel with me.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. I am Dr. Angela Chester, and my guest today is Valerie Katz. We are talking about the many hats that we women wear: wife, mom, and even grandmother. Well, we're now to that grandmother stage in your life, and I have to ask this question. I've heard many grandmothers say that being the grandmother is the best mom to be. So I have to ask, in your own words, is being grandmother the best mother?
Well, honestly, I kind of went into that sort of like I did with having children. My children didn't get married till they were in their early 30s, so I wasn't a grandmother till I was in my 50s.
I see.
And one of the ladies that I worked with that was just the grandmother said, oh, your life is going to change when you have grandchildren. And I used to say to her, when they're old enough to drive my golf cart, that's when my life will change. But as it turned out, my son and his wife separated when my granddaughter was 18 months old.
I see.
And my son and her came to live with me, and I was working at a private school at the time, and they had a preschool. So I got her enrolled there, and then I would take her to school with me. The first day she cried and cried and carried on, and when I got to my office, I looked at the girls and I said, I'm too old for this. But we got really, really close, and I found out that grandmother thing is really good. I kept my daughter's 2 children for about a week. She and her husband went away, and when they were having dinner after they got home, she was talking about dinner, and they said, well, I want this, and the other says, well, I want that. And she said, well, that's not the way it's done here. We're all having the same thing. And she said, well, at Grandma's house, Grandma let us have different things. And so she called me the next day, and she said, did you do that? And I said, yes. And she said, that's not the house I grew up in. And I said, well, you're the mother, I'm the grandmother. I can do that now.
I love how every grandmother has had that moment where it's like, sorry, I'm grandma. It's like special permissions for me
Yes.
because I'm grandma. So I love that. I love that. And grandfather can kind of save you because grandpa comes in and says, oh, come with me and saves you from mom or dad. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I do have a question when it comes to preparing to be a grandmother. Now, we understand that when we're about to be a new mom, we do this thing called nesting and we prepare and, get the nursery together. Is there a version of nesting that grandmas do?
I don't know if I had that or not. One of the things that I have done is for all of my grandchildren and for my friends' grandchildren is I crochet them a blanket, and it's crib size. I mean, it's not small. It has their name at the top and some sort of a animal on it, and then their birth date underneath. Yeah. And I do that for all of them, and I give them that when they come around. But I'm not sure if I really prepared myself to be a grandmother. I waited so long to do it. I mean, I was in my 50s.
And I think that creating something to wrap baby to swaddle baby, I think is definitely a grandmother thing, and I love it. I know that my grandmother did it. My mother did it when she became a grandmother, and it's just so wonderful because you're able, when you pack up your life and you put it, in the attic for storage, and you go back and you find these things and you rediscover these wonderful moments of your life. It is so nice to be able to pull out that item and go, oh my gosh, look, I'd forgotten about that.
Yes,
It really is a beautiful thing. And for many people, especially if your grandparents live out of town, where it's, oh yeah, I had forgotten about that because grandma's 1,000 miles away, or in my case, 3,000 miles away from my son and my mother. So that's an awesome thing that you're doing there.
Well, another thing that I did was my first granddaughter was born in Chicago, and I was in Los Angeles, and I sent a picture of me on a magnet so that they could put it on the refrigerator down where she could see it. And I said, so when I come, she'll know who Grandma is.
That is a great idea. Yeah, because for so many kids, they haven't seen you for a year, so it's like, who's this lady?
Yeah.
And by the time they get used to you, now it's time
You're
for you
gone.
to go home. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a great idea. Now, you have been wife, you've been mom, you've been grandmother, but you have recently added a new title to what you do, and that is author. Did you think in your early years that you would become an author?
Never. Never. It happened quite accidentally through a series of emails that I sent out to friends and family about my relocation from California to Arkansas. And they're like two different worlds. Yeah. And I found it all very interesting and pretty funny. And so I thought, I can't believe they're doing this here. And then I would write these emails home. And then when my husband passed away, my sister came to live with me, and she and I took to the road in a 35-foot motorhome, just the two of us, much to our children's chagrin. And we have had some really hilarious adventures. And people started saying, this stuff is hilarious, Valerie. You should put it into a book. Yeah. A couple of years ago, my son said, Mom, for Christmas next year, the only thing I want is a copy of your book.
I love it.
Get it together. And so I did. So now I'm an author.
I think that is so awesome. Now, I know that it's almost time for us to go, and I could just sit and have so many more conversations with you, but I want to ask you this. If there's one bit of wisdom, one nugget that you could share with our viewers today, what would that nugget be on how to be your best self? What would your nugget be?
Well, I think you need faith. I think you need friendship. I think you need family. And I think you should tell yourself always to be happy. Lots of things have happened to me. I've lost my husband, I've lost my son, and different things. But I choose to be happy. And that's an important thing.
Choose to be happy. Give yourself that permission to be happy.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Valerie Katz, thank you so much for being on Daily Spark TV today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
And thank you for tuning in. I hope that I have inspired, empowered, and enlightened you. And remember, though you may wear many hats, each hat may it be a comfortable fit. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.